Hello, welcome to week number 5 of our Justice Administration class. I hope everybody's been safe and healthy. And moving on here, this week's module and topic is something that's very sensitive as far as policing goes. And unfortunately, just recently, we've had some incidences where we have to really look into the aspect of domestic violence, but not just domestic violence, but domestic violence that involves a police officer. I'm going to go over a couple of cases that we've had here, but more importantly, the most important thing here is the fact that you need an effective policy in place. And also going back to our police job is in background checks, making sure that you've checked the background of a potential candidate for a police job and making sure there's no domestic violence involved with that. And also with the new domestic violence policies, the fact that you have to report. There's no such thing as the code of silence anymore in policing. If an officer witnesses a fellow officer that's involved in a domestic, they have to take action. They cannot cover up. And so we're going to look into those things. I'm also going to give you a scenario where you're going to have to take some action on there, and we're going to review some other cases. I've been involved particularly in training of police and policies and procedures for that. Years ago, I was contacted by the International Association of Chiefs of Police to assist them with doing a model policy on investigating domestic violence calls. And one other part of that is that I was also put into contact with a Rhode Island police detective by the name of Tori Lynn Heaton, and she was married to a fellow police officer and became the subject of abuse. She suffered some terrible emotional and physical situations from there. Nobody did anything. And so we're going to talk to that and how those things happen. You're going to listen to an interview with her. As a result of that, I worked with Tori for over a year, and she's doing great now, which is very good. But as a result of all that is that we were able to develop a system of investigating officer-involved domestic violence and setting policies for that. As I said in the beginning here, we don't need certain types of things with headlines, and those being when an officer is involved in a domestic violence situation, you need to really act with that. We can see just recently in the Boston Globe, the new police commissioner has been put on leave. There's some controversy there. He too was married to a fellow police officer, got divorced, and just when he made commissioner, it was brought up that they had a past, and it's alleged that there wasn't full reports on that. And this is from the reporting from the Boston Globe. And they're still under investigation. He's been placed on leave, but all indications are that this may come to a conclusion where he may retain his job. Unfortunately, another incident happened with a Massachusetts State Police sergeant up in New Hampshire. He was been accused of domestic violence. He's still being held without bail in a prison up in New Hampshire. He was having an affair, and the woman that he was having an affair with, he was going to break up with her. And this involved where he went to her apartment and allegedly strangled her and kind of kidnapped her, kept her locked into a room, all those things there. And it come out, and then he got into a high-speed chase with another police department up in New Hampshire. He eluded them. They got warrants for his arrest, and he's being held there under danger. We're going to talk about danger and danger assessment, strangulation. And this is something that we don't need in the job. And of course, the media takes real homage to that. We don't want to see these on the front pages of our newspapers. And so in order to prevent that, you need to have a model policy. And in those model policies is that, and you're going to see the one from the IACP and also one we have here in Massachusetts. We have what's known as a domestic violence law enforcement guidelines. And within those guidelines, you're going to go down to a section that involves police officers and the policy and procedure that you're going to need for going on there. You need to take a look at all these guidelines that are here. But I was on the committee that put together some of these, and what we had to do is go and take parts of the International Chiefs of Police Association guidelines and get those implemented into our statewide policies, because what happens in these things here is that when we have a situation when there's allegations against law enforcement personnel, the one thing with these guidelines, these 2017 guidelines have been revised, is the fact that we have our policies and procedures. So for accreditation, mass accreditation, and state accreditations. But here, because this has been issued as a guideline by the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, is that you don't have to be accredited. All 351 cities and towns have to follow these guidelines. And what we did as a study group, we put this section in here to acknowledge the fact that there can be domestic violence cases with police, and these are the things that you have to go. And there's so many checks and balances that have to be put in here from the minute the dispatcher takes that call. Unlike any other domestic violence call, when these calls come in, is that a supervisor higher than the rank of the officer that is being called about has to respond. The dispatcher has to immediately notify the commanding officer that's on there, and also notify a commanding officer that is not on duty, and also put a report. The on-scene supervisor has things that he or she has to do in there. The on-duty commanding officer has things that he or she has to do. As far as that, looking at all those things, you're going to look at those things there. There's going to be other considerations, particularly for the victim. One thing when an officer-involved domestic violence call is that the victim is provided with a liaison officer from the department that will help guide the victim through the system, because one of the things the victims are always told by the abuser is that nothing will be ever done. I know everybody, I know the court, I know this, and this is going to do that. The supervisor has responsibilities. All these other things you have to have referrals. You're going to have safety plans, welfare checks, all those things there, assisting to get the victim a protective order. There's going to be follow-up, all those types of things there. So these are some of the things that have to be in place for these things here. And so what the national policy does is that there's a lot of things with prevention, education, and training. We're going to have those incident response protocols like you just saw and the posting that I put on there. You're going to really focus in on the safety of the victim. That's the number one thing. There are certain administrative things that can happen with there, is that you're going to see that there's an administrative order of protection that I've included in the module. There are going to be things with danger assessment that are going to be done with that. There's going to be all these different questions have to be answered. And if the victim answers about strangulation, there's a strangulation worksheet that's going to be filled out. And what these do is it assists the court in determining the level of danger that's been presented for that victim. And so you do that in developing the policies, is that the policy is going to you're going to go for victim safety. You're going to do a danger assessment. You're going to have command staff that are going to be there as a point of contact of victim. Your whole thing is about saving lives of people, reducing the liability of the department. And furthermore, is hopefully in certain cases, you're going to save the career of an officer. This is very important for the victim, because a lot of times the victims won't report an officer-involved domestic violence situation because of the fact it's all about pension. If the officer has the years on the job, and once you're after 10 years on the job, you're vested in the retirement system. Now, even if the victim gets a divorce from the abuser, she or he is entitled to 50% of that pension. So if an officer is making $100,000 base, they're going to get 80% of that, or $80,000 a year. And so now a victim's faced with a situation was, if I report this thing and my partner is fired, they're going to lose their pension. And if it's going to happen to me, I'm going to lose $40,000 a year for the rest of my life, and plus health insurance. So all these dynamics come on the victim. But there's also a tremendous amount of liability now because you have the policy in place, particularly here in Massachusetts, that if you don't take the proper action, if you try to cover up, you're in trouble. If you don't enforce, if there's a protective order out there, you have to enforce it. If you don't respond in a timely manner, if you don't give the victim information, and more importantly, if you don't arrest that person that's the abuse, you're going to get in a lot of different liability. Because if you what's known as a patent of differential treatment or application of the law to domestic violence cases. And again, if you retain an abusive officer, you're also going to get into all kinds of situations where there's a tremendous amount of liability. So what the policy looks at is prevention, education, and particularly training in doing those things. So when we're going to look at prevention, we're looking at collaboration. And collaboration means that we're going to partner with an outside agency, our advocate system like HAWK here or Jane Doe, all those types of things. And also getting the citizens involved in those types of things. As far as that is that you're going to have regular training about domestic violence, particularly officer-involved domestic violence. You're going to have things about use of force, ethics, evidence, and all these come into place, particularly the ethical part, which you're going to see when you do your scenario in the assignment. And so we look at all those types of things. Is that from the minute you start the recruit class, you do nothing but train, educate. You make sure that the dispatchers aren't compromised. You make sure the field training officers emphasize the whole fact to the officers that they're training out of the academy that we're not going to put up with domestic violence. You're going to make sure that all your supervisors are on board with these types of things. You're going to, as I said before, you're going to use that with your pre-hiring screening. You're going to make a conditional offer of employment with the emphasis on domestic violence. You're going to interview after you hire that person. You're going to tell them about their responsibilities. You're going to talk about all those responsibilities that are going on with this particular situation. And so you need to look at those types of things. You need to look at the fact that you're going to make sure that there's protocols as those types of things. More importantly, is getting weapons out of the house, looking at those types of things, getting the victim support, making sure there's confidentiality, and getting those direct links to what's going on. There's going to be internal affairs investigations. There could be suspensions. They'll be looking at all those types of things that go on with that. And there's also a type of thing that even if the victim doesn't go forward with that, you can still go on as a department, what's known as evidence-based prosecution, and doing those things. You're going to make sure that fellow officers aren't surveilling or doing anything on behalf of those things. You can issue, even if the victim doesn't want to go to court, to get a 209A here in Massachusetts. The chief can issue a administrative order of protection, giving the officer things that they have to do. They're going to have to get all kinds of things where they can prohibit any types of acts. They're going to be hand delivered and documented, and then the victim's going to be notified of things. The victim's going to be able to get all kinds of training, danger assessment, looking at, and then unfortunately, if the officer is going to be terminated, there's a policy for doing those things there. So this, as I said, this is a very, very sensitive part of the job, but I'm just looking forward to seeing what you do with that and to see how you react to these scenarios. Probably of all the things that we're doing here, this is one of the things that if you were an administrator of a police department, this is the thing that's going to make you or break you. This is the thing that's going to define how you run your department. So I really look forward to seeing your replies. I look forward to seeing that you understand these things. And without further ado, I'm going to sign off here and just again keep masked up, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll be working on these things. Thank you.